A $40 million radar. A $1.44 million swarm. Which side wins? At 5:11 a.m., Ukraine bet on timing, not tonnage, exploiting a 14-second shift change gap to slip 32 Ram 2X drones past Russia's 96L6V. The target, Valkyria 2, a drone factory feeding Moscow's eyes and fists. Stay with me, we'll break the Phantom Mimic protocol, the decoys, and the math that turned cost into a weapon, and confidence into a trap. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Why did a radar built to see everything miss what mattered most? Because confidence hardens into habit. The number isn't the advantage, it's the weakness.
Ukraine says it has struck a Russian oil refinery near Moscow in retaliation for a wave of drone attacks on Kyiv and other cities.
Ukrainian Defense Forces is the surprisingly lethal impact its use of relatively cheap drones has had on Russian forces.
Unlike the Javelins, which you have to get pretty close to a tank with a Javelin, you can launch these kamikaze drones from up to 8 miles away.
The 96L6V stood as the high-confidence eye over Valkyria 2, sweeping long-range, sorting returns, feeding clean tracks to SA-22 interceptors. It was bought to erase doubt. Ukraine wrote a different budget line, 32 Ram 2X at $45,000 each, plus decoys and spoofers stacked for effect. Less metal. More method. A defender that trusts patterns is easy to bend when the pattern gets nudged. The 14-second shift change gap sat right there, too small to brief, big enough to break the timeline. Screens rechecked. Hands swap.
At least 7 people were killed in the Ukrainian capital when Russian drones targeted power and water infrastructure, as well as residential areas.
Why aren't we rushing more of these kinds of weapons? There's another type of drone called the kamikaze drone, Mika, which is actually like a flying bomb. It's a guided missile.
Seemingly with devastatingly accurate missile fire. So why are Ukraine's cheap, slow drones so successful against Russian targets?
Confidence dips, then lags. Night Owl ran the floor like a pit boss. 1,600 hours of sat frames. Wind models. Radar habits. No extra guns, just timing and angles set against routine. It didn't guess. It scheduled. Enter the Phantom Mimic protocol. Ram 2X units eased into biological-like arcs, letting signature buckets blur and mislabel. When a system starts asking, bird or threat, confidence turns into latency. That lag is gold. Think expensive lock, cheap key. The key isn't stronger. It's cut to the tumbler.
Shows a Russian missile launcher sitting in the open. Suddenly, it's consumed by a huge fireball.
According to the Ukrainian authorities, Russian forces used 430 drones and 18 missiles. Most of them were shot down.
That was a work of a Turkish-made TB2 drone. The unmanned drone can hover over tanks and destroy them.
Here the tumbler was the human-machine handoff at 5:11 a.m., when the room trusts the system and the system trusts the room. Modern L-band and S-band search radars lean on classification filters. Push them into ambiguous, bird-like returns under crosswind and fog, and false positive control slows real intercepts. The net still works, on clutter. So the ladder goes up. Banshee 80s pose as a fast mover strike. IR Nova flares bait SA-22 seekers. AL-50 micro decoys paint synthetic heat behind the real Ram 2X path. Each rung pulls eyes and missiles off axis. The $1.44 million swarm didn't beat $40 million by force. It beat the expectation baked into it. The radar did its job, on the wrong problem. Now the trap is set.
Flames erupted in the early hours of Friday at several locations in Kyiv.
We don't know the answer to that for sure, but a U.S. defense official briefed reporters yesterday and said they had used these weapons the Ukrainians had to great effect against the Russians. Appears to have sold them some more systems at the beginning, according to the Ukrainian defense minister. But some people are wondering...
Follow the money and the minutes as cost turns into control, second by second, and access gets rented out of thin air. What can you buy with 14 seconds? Access. If you control the seconds, you rent the sky. The microgap lives in routine. Scope handoff. Recheck ritual. A calm nod as the console changes hands. Night Owl slots the run for 5:11 a.m., right as Valkyria 2's operators pass the scope and confirm status lines. Not chaos, a lull. Enough to start the clock. But the air fights back. A 26 miles per hour crosswind chews at spacing.
We knew the Ukrainians had about 20 of these small drones before this conflict, and when I would ask military experts about their impact, a defense official said yesterday they're working to do that, didn't offer any specifics. Turkey, which is trying to remain neutral in this conflict, they fire Hellfire missiles. Those are $30 million apiece. These drones cost about $1 to $2 million. They fire small missiles.
Biological mimicry needs messy arcs, not straight rails, and messy flight invites drift. One ram 2x slides wide, another yaws late. Cohesion thins, timing tightens. You feel the plan stretch. The push splits on 3 axes. Alpha angles toward the assembly hall. Beta lines on the warehouses. Gamma threads for the control center. Delta is noise with teeth, 10 Banshee 80s pace high and hot, shaped to read like a Su-27 package. Sensors swivel. Launchers turn off axis. Meanwhile, Raven LX schemes the edge of the net, catching unfiltered sweeps and feeding them back into the Mimic stack. The scope fills. It sees too much, then picks the wrong thing. The flood is the point. SA-22 cruise chase urgency. Fast movers, bright heat, clean shapes. IR Nova throws a wash of thermal clutter across the front. AL-50S paint false heat behind the real Ram 2X trail, building a ghost tail that drags seekers wide and late. Here's the physics the defender can't cheat: seeker saturation and off-bore sight confusion stretch missile flyout and burn interceptors on junk angles, so the defender's spend rate outruns the actual threat rate. You pay for every doubt with a missile. Mislabels cascade. False flocks ripple on the screen. Crosswind wobble keeps the filter unsure. The swarm eats distance. 7 minutes open like a hallway, quiet in the noise. This is why you spend $1.44 million on precision, not mass. 14 seconds by a weapons-free tunnel. Pride in the radar becomes the blind spot that guards the door. The factory was a target. The real hit lands on Moscow's trust in its own shield, a bruise that spreads across the network. Seconds beat shells. The cheapest line item wins when it buys access, not blast. That's the hard lesson of this strike: price tags don't decide outcomes, timing does. You saw how a brief lull turned a wall into a doorway. That's cost asymmetry at work: precise intel, low-cost tools, and disciplined execution outscore raw spend. If you value tactics over noise, subscribe. Comment your choice below: add more missiles, or buy more seconds. Next, we test the counter. What happens when the defender tightens filters, trims false positives, and kills the lull? Does the edge hold, or does the key need a new cut?